Really great question to ask is, what will Sony do with Canon and Nikon getting into the mirrorless interchangeable lens camera market in 2018? Hey friends, I think there was a great post on Sony Alpha Rumors that kind of detailed a couple things. I'll just give those to you now. I'm not gonna really use too much of those. I want that to be, though, a nice foundation, if you will, for where the conversation can go. I'm very interested in what you have to say on the subject, because there have been a couple of people lately, especially in the comments, where I've just been like, oh my gosh, you changed my perspective on this, and I really highly value the feedback that I get from y'all. You could lower prices, they could have more mature software, specifically with like the Star Reader issue. They could have a better app system, they could have better service, add stuff like real touch screens, like a lot of other manufacturers are doing tilty flippy instead of just tilty. Reduce or eliminate unnecessary cuts on hardware, like only having one instead of two UHS 2 card slots in the A9, log in the A9, like USB 3.0. There was also a suggestion there should be better focus by wire, but I don't know how that would be implemented. I know there's probably, if I thought about it for a while, probably could come up with a solution that wouldn't work from the engineer's perspective, but who knows. But here's what I think Sony probably will and won't do. I think what Sony won't do is reduce prices on their full-frame stuff. Sony, as a brand across the board, across all of the consumer electronics they do, seem to aim for the higher price points. I think what they could do instead is radically improve their lower-end offerings, like a really good replacement for the 6000 and 5100 would be very welcome. I think taking care of the APS-C market, more lenses, better body, more and better lenses, better bodies, professional APS-C lens options, I think these would all magnify. And if they could keep the cost down, I think those would all be huge steps in the right direction for Sony in response to Canon and Nikon, because the stuff that Canon's already put out in the mirrorless space is basically a rebel. It's still using the 80D sensor. It's not impressive. It doesn't compare to the Alpha 6000, Alpha 6300, Alpha 6500. They just don't, especially the 6500. Nikon's limited foray into the mirrorless interchangeable lens camera market with the 1 series that were supposed to be wonderful by all accounts, but that ended up failing. Well, they failed. And so I think Sony can have a degree of confidence, doesn't have to take Nikon as seriously as they might otherwise because of the history that Nikon's had with mirrorless. Really, I think from a top-down perspective, if you will, from a higher end perspective, higher level, more abstract perspective, Sony probably doesn't have to worry too much, because Nikon don't realize that when they're playing in the mirrorless market, they're gonna have to compete on Sony's terms, and they're terrible at that. They're really good at competing with themselves and with each other. If they take Sony seriously in the mirrorless market, perhaps Sony will have to do something about it. But I really genuinely believe that as long as Canon and Nikon probably will, I genuinely believe that Canon and Nikon will probably stick to their current product design philosophies, and it will benefit Sony because Canon and Nikon won't be competing on the same level as Sony will be. They won't be putting in all of the features Sony is. They won't be really striving to give incredible value to dollar or value to currency of your native country. You know, I think that Sony will stay on top for those reasons. In terms of improvements that Sony, in my opinion, needs to make, I think especially on their entry-level offerings, they need to have EOS M100 from Canon style menus. I think they need to be smartphone-esque. I think they need to be like a Hasselblad X1D50C. I think if they could reduce the cost of APS-C lenses, if they could increase the quality of APS-C color science, if they could, just the color science across the board needs to improve to the spec of the A9. Think more lenses, more bodies, pro lenses for APS-C. Basically, supporting APS-C would do a huge number for Sony. I think Sony can beat Canon and Nikon on value for dollar, but I think that they really need to work on their connectivity stuff. If they elect to go with computational photography as a way to increase value, that could be huge as well. But you know, this seemed like a better video idea when I saw the post on SAR than it does right now, because I feel like I've somewhat fleshed it all out that quickly. But really, I don't think Sony will have to think too hard about Canon and Nikon getting into mirrorless, as long as they fix their menus and they fix their ergonomics for people with bigger hands than mine. So if Sony, as long as Sony's product design philosophy continues as it is, putting as much value for dollar into cameras, they're going to be fine. Sony improving their hardware substantially, beginning with the A9, and we're seeing it again on the RX10 Mark IV, keeping ahead and probably will for a while on performance. Will any of this change how much people have bought into CaNikon lenses? Probably not, no. Will it change how ergonomic Canon and Nikon make their DSLRs? No, probably not. People will always want more and more performance. Will always want the best possible for what they need. Canon and Nikon change lens mounts. I imagine there will be a substantial amount of people that say, you know what, I'm interested in Sony now. If Canon and Nikon can't really dive into the product design philosophy that Sony's got and match it tit for tat, I think Sony's gonna keep pulling users. I think at this point, Sony's mostly got to compete with itself as long as mirrorless becomes a primary focusing point for Canon and Nikon. As long as they're putting a lot of energy into mirrorless, Sony, who's really only putting energy into mirrorless, is going to be very well off. As long as Sony improves on what they have issues with, like menus, overheating, which I believe they've addressed, but that's something that a lot of people still bring up for some reason. Menus, overheating, better lens options, better lens selections, especially with like the Nifty 50 needing an update very badly. Better wide angle for FE mount as another option, as another example. I think Sony's going to be okay. I think they need to work on their menus, but you know, I'm very curious to see what you have to say on the matter. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one.